Yep, welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. I talk a lot about how RPG horror stories are supposed to teach us about things to look out for, and you know what? It's kind of true. Reading a lot of these RPG horror stories and your email submissions have been very eye-opening for me, extremely eye-opening. I can finally be more aware of the problems that I've been dealing with and look out for problems ahead of time. And yeah, I know it's kind of stupid of me to be like, oh my god, RPG horrors actually teach you things? Wow, Morrow. I'm not the brightest tool in a shed. Or is it the sharpest? It's one of those. Anyway, before we get to more me being stupid, let's get to some RPG horror stories for today and learn some more new things today. My character died to PvP session 1. Oh man, PvP stories. Last video was also about some sort of a PvP regarding a PDF file trying to seduce a child. Ugh, gross. Anyway, let's get to this story. This happened quite a few years ago by now, but my friend at the time was running a game where arcane magic was outlawed. I was a cleric who was basically a cop, and we had a barbarian who was also a cop, and then a wizard and his good friend who is a druid. When I say we're basically a cop, I mean we're part of a special organization to hunt down and apprehend arcane magic users. My character was supposed to have internalized hatred for arcane magic users despite being a Githzerai who had innate magic. It was supposed to be about him learning to love that part of himself instead of feeling disgusted and like he needs to repent. There was some sort of contest going on in the city where we all arrived by boat and we meet up with the rest of the party. The party was split up by faction with the 2 cops arriving together and the 2 pro-magic people arriving together. Some DM magic happened and the 2 groups were traveling together for a day. We arranged travel for the morning where an artificer who built a car would drive us. The cops went to sleep and the other 2 decided to run while we slept. We woke up in the morning and went to the artificer who was just a teenage boy. He drove us for a while until his car had a mishap and broke down. The barbarian decided to kill the teenage artificer while he was fixing the car. To be clear, we were both working with the cops to apprehend arcane magic users, and this guy decided to kill a teenager in front of me. I attempted to apprehend him and I was told this would start PvP. Are you okay with this? To which I said, no, but my character wouldn't just let him murder a kid. So the barbarian proceeded to murder my cleric in about 2 turns. I got the last laugh though, because his character was murdered next session by the pro-magic half of the party. The second session was the last session we played due to an IRL falling out. Ultimately, I feel the DM was at fault for letting us make characters of any faction, allowing the party to split, not stopping the problem player. Yeah, I mean, having a setting like that where arcane magic is outlawed, but putting players on 2 separate sides, one player's being the cops and one player's being the magic users, I guess. Is Druid an arcane magic user? I have no idea, but I'm guessing they're part of the arcane faction, the cop faction and arcane faction. Splitting the party like this and then allowing PvP to happen, that's literally a recipe for a disaster session. You have players that are already pinning against each other immediately because they're on 2 separate factions, and then you're allowing the barbarian and the cleric to just fight each other. Why did the barbarian just attack a teenager for no reason? Is it because he's an artificer? Weren't they just supposed to apprehend, arrest? This session was a mess, and maybe, you know what, it might be best that it kind of ended on second session. I'm sorry you guys had a falling out, but I think this thing was just not gonna work out. Might be best to look for a different game for now, I think. The concept sounds kind of cool, with arcane magic being outlawed and seeing how the world changes around it, but you probably should have had people be on the same team together. Either you're anti-cop and pro-magic, or you're for the cop team, anti-magic, and just keep the party together. Anyway, let's get to the next story for today. GM is fair and unbiased during PvP. I was playing with this group for 3 years in the same universe as another group by the same GM. 2 groups sometimes affecting each other into universe, and at the end it was supposed to be the big conflict between the 2 groups. Of note, my party's arguably more evil one. We've done some bad things and we generally go out of our own way, which does set us up for the final conflict with the good group. Also, there's some strange homebrew items in our party, specifically a code that allows all of us to merge into one, each taking out over turns inside the body, moving, talking, actions, taking the greatest of AC, saving throws. Is it like a Dragon Ball Z fusion, ha? Or is it more like you become this weird amalgamation, like a mutant? Ugh, that'd be terrifying. At this final session, we're hanging out in town we're building when the big bad GM-controlled NPC appears with the other group. So it's us versus the other party, and the GM's NPC. Also, with the other party are 4 wizards that surround the battle arena, holding a shield up to prevent any of our allies from getting in. Notably, the GM would frequently use NPC wizards to cast counterspell at 9th level for the benefit of the other party. We kill the cleric and the GM jumps in to decide that when one of us dies, they get a legendary action to do one thing, and he mass heals his party. Okay, fine, they kill one of us and she heals us as well. During the fight, in a critical moment where an athletics check would decide if we lost, the GM decided to allow the other party to use their inspirations to make us re-roll the check. This has no precedent in the campaign. We've never used inspirations offensively. We rolled well enough anyway to win about 4 re-rolls as the other party used their inspiration on our athletics checks. And then the GM said that he has been keeping track of the joke inspirations we had awarded to him throughout the campaign, and he started using his inspirations to make us re-roll. So the GM is explicitly making us re-roll using his inspiration to try to kill our party. We survive anyway. So then we finally gain an advantage, revivifying one of our dead party members and polymorphing her to keep her alive. This was not counterspelled because the wizard had used their reactions. At the top of the next round, the GM tells us that a ring on the dead cleric's finger starts glowing. The GM-controlled NPC's Big Bad, who is at the top of the initiative, then retrieves the ring and reveals to us that it's a ring of 3 wishes, which recharges every 100 years, which had elapsed just now. He, the GM, then used the ring to wish for our party to be dead. After that, the GM and the other party gleefully describe how they used the other wishes to undo all the things we've done over 3 real-life years in a campaign. GM swears up and down he was completely unbiased and he could have gone either way. Right, unbiased. The BBEG teamed up with the other team and they used apparently a miracle of 3 wishes ring to just whoosh the other party away or something like that. This is a lot to unpack here. First of all, D&D is not designed as a PvP kind of game. I'll just be straight up. It's just not designed as a PvP kind of game. It's designed for your party members to fight against NPCs, enemies, monsters, things like that. Boss fights. It's not designed to fight like cleric versus cleric or wizard versus druid and stuff like that. It's not designed for PvP. And any sort of PvP that nobody really agrees with or pulling out this sort of nonsense moves, this insane moves by the DM is just... it's just gonna be a recipe for disaster, because now you have a clearly advantage of the other team. You have the advantage of the other team with BBG on their side, the wizard shields, and then the party's initiative, or like what, inspiration, can be used now to counter offensively the rerolls of your party for athletics, and then the DM can use their joke inspirations to like still counter you guys again, and you still make it. And then for the DM has to make up that, oh, I just snagged a ring of wishes and it suddenly recharged finally after 100 years. Oh, it's already been 100 years. Perfect. I'll wish you guys away. I know it doesn't matter, but it would have been kind of cool if the wishes act like as a monkey's paw. When the DM actually wished your party to be dead, you guys instead turned undead, but you still stayed there. And the fight would continue in some way. I don't know, man. This seems like a disaster, but don't fret yet. We have a lot of edit comments to kind of explain a little bit more in detail about everything in this world, because I'm interested in what's happening behind the scenes. Edit, answering some questions. What happened after the aftermath? This was 2 days ago. The only aftermath thus far is this post and some rumblings between those of us that got screwed over. That campaign was the final session of the campaign. There are no more games to be played. Also, this session was held in person for most people. I was remote, so I don't have insight onto what happened when the call ended. But I doubt there was much drama, as we're all adults and we are long-term friends. Was there no indication of this behavior before? None. He was a reasonable GM in all of our previous sessions. In his defense, he had only had to balance one party's interest before that time. It's my belief the GM had attached his ego to his big bad NPC. As his explanation for the inspiration frickery when I confronted him was that he was mad that he had forgotten to counterspell the dying action of our party member. So to make up for it, he decided to allow the inspiration frickery and use his GM inspiration to try to kill us. He clearly felt he was on their team and was unable to act fairly when it came to his rulings. I can forgive a mistake like that, but to plainly deny it and pretend you were completely fair made me lose a lot of respect for him. 3. This is fake and fiction. I wish it were. I was in disbelief. I will summarize here the arguments the GM gave for the unfair rulings and the ring. You had powerful allies too. We had a Tarrasque and a dragon that were trapped outside the shield. The GM justified his infinite counterspell by allowing us to make one attack per round with the Tarrasque or dragon to the target of his choosing. This was never a factor. Additionally, we had a mage NPC with an initiative roll, but if we tried to have her cast a spell that was too strong, he said, "I'm gonna rule that she doesn't know that spell." When it came to their allies, they acted autonomously at the GM's discretion. For our allies, the GM ruled that we didn't tell them we wanted help. So they were waiting with their dicks in their hand until we specifically complained. There was a moment when the shield was down due to the GM using his NPC wizard to cancel 4 of our high level spells. GM ruled that the dragon was flying too far away to get in to help us. You could have gotten the ring instead of them if you had done a plot hook. This one I found particularly ridiculous. Yeah, we didn't do the story the way you wanted, so the win ring is effectively our punishment. The inspiration frickery. I mentioned this before, but the GM told me he was mad that he forgot to counterspell the dying action of our PC and tried to make up for it by changing the rules to kill us. There was a myriad of other instances of bias displayed, but the session was like 10 hours and I can't write everything that happened. Instances where the GM allowed the other party to redo movement, retcon their whole turns, and when it came to us, he forced us to stick with any mistakes we made. I should mention that when the ring first came out, the GM had began by wishing to heal the party to full health, including fully reviving the dead cleric. I was so fed up at this point with the mountain of BS. I said, why don't you just wish us to be dead at this point? My other party members were on the same page, so the GM did so. The GM had already decided who was going to win, and it was a foregone conclusion. Again, I've lost a lot of respect for him, and I won't be playing with him again. I believe he had a responsibility to us as players, and he completely screwed us over for the interest of his self-insert big bad. So, this is still a lot to unpack, dude. This is a lot to process. So the DM basically wanted to have his big BBEG go on this adventure and fight alongside the good guys against your guys, the bad guys. Gave special treatment to the good guys while denying you special treatment to the bad guys or any sort of equal treatment. Made sure that everything worked out in his BBG's side, basically winning the encounter. What is this? How could you guys stick with somebody like this? If this just kind of happened towards the end, then this guy is just incompetent, or he just really, you know what it is? I think it's an ego trip. The DM was so infatuated with the BBEG, wanted the BBEG to win, didn't care for player agency or why they would even want to run a PvP game in the first place, and they just made it so that his side won because that's what he wanted, and that's it. Man, that sucks, dude. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. Y'all had to invest so much time into a game that ultimately didn't matter and the DM just kind of ruined. Well, point made, don't run with this DM. Simple as that. Let's get to the next story. Hopefully no PvP this time around, dude. PvP and D&D, or TTRPGs in general, just brings out the worst out of DMs. I don't know why. Bob is the best. He's better than your character. This story happened in 2020-ish. Great time for online TTRPGs. It was a Pathfinder game with me, 2 other players, and the DM. For clarity, I'm playing a human battle oracle. We have a gnome rogue and a dwarf barbarian. The group had a good dynamic, but the DM was kinda weird, telling us too much about her husbands, and her cat's bodily functions, while insisting that she played loud music in the background. If you turn her down just right, you could almost get rid of the sound of her awful R&B. But anyway, this story isn't about her and her insistence on talking about her husband's farts. Our group is gathered together under the hook that there's a cultist invasion in town, where people are trying to kidnap townies to sacrifice them to their god. Freaking big bad Tiamat. So all of us find the motivation to hunt down this cult and put the hurt on them. But we get to the one chapter where the DM just decides to put all her former players' OCs into the mix. She regales us in-game about Bob, a super charming, you fell in love with him before you even met him, stupid half-orc barbarian, who saved the whole town from evil gods. Bob is her husband's old character, and needless to say, when she was talking about Bob, he was in a room petting his farting cat. Why do I dislike the way this is described already? I feel like the DM is just gonna be... Is the DM gonna be talking about Bob the whole time? Oh, Bob is so great. Oh, Bob did this. Oh, Bob could have done that. I can't believe you guys can't do this thing. What's up with this infatuation with a farting cat in the background? What's up with this DM? If they're already having these like toxic traits, I kind of feel like they're toxic traits. If they already have like if the red flag's already blatant, why'd you guys stick around for this long? Seriously. The person telling us this is a druid who served alongside Bob in a party of adventurers. We never needed to meet the druid, but the druid just so happened to be following our adventure path almost exactly, for no reason. So they tell us about Bob, and how cool Bob is, and how Bob mooned the god of evil before beating him up like a school bully. Her husband laughed loudly in the background. Everything was Bob this and Bob that, trying to build up the character. Eventually we get to a town that had erected a brass statue of Bob. and is holding a festival to celebrate Bob. At no point had any of us cared or asked who Bob was. It was just a massive lore dump that only amounted to Bob is better than all of you, and Bob is the best. So we were like, that's cool, we're gonna dip. DM said, you know there's gonna be mythic loot here, right? Completely out of character. So we were like, okay, I guess we can stay a little. The DM just going with Bob this, Bob that. Has the DM considered to Has the DM considered to bother to ask what the players want to do in the game, what their characters would like to do, or at least ask if they're even interested in a world where Bob is the most important thing in the world? No, because to this DM, Bob is the most important thing there. This is literally, you know what it feels like? It feels like a weird fanfic. If it's a fanfic of a previous game about a character, and the entire game is just centered about worshipping and praising this one character, Bob. What is the point for this? What is the drive here? What is the motivation? Does knowing about Bob do anything positive to the game other than make your players bored? If not, then stop talking about Bob. It's fine to have heroes in your game's story, right? It's fine to have erected statues of specific heroes, like have a statue for Bob. It's fine to have a little bit of lore dump for Bob if that's what you want to have. But to have everything be talking about Bob the whole time, dude, just get me out of this game at that point. I don't want to hear about Bob a second time again. If I need to hear more about Bob, I might just scream. We were forced to participate in a celebration of 3 entire campaign sessions. During the celebration, the dwarf was given a Vorpal Great Axe and adamantine armor. I was given 2 free feats and a 3-level boost, making me a higher level than anyone else. And the gnome got a literal mountain of gold. We were level 4. Imagine this. The DM, who's new to Pathfinder, throws a random encounter at us. A group of aggressive kobolds worshipping an evil deity, not Tiamat. What she quickly realized is that a level 7 battle oracle in the previous level 4 party makes things hard to balance. I do what my class does and bully Maguire them, while the well-equipped dwarf proves she was already more than a match for them. Meanwhile, the gnome sneak attacks from a tree vantage wherever he isn't counting his money. So from the fight, we naturally have gained 3 kobold pets, which we named after different cereals, as you do. Mine was Captain Crunch. That's pretty cool. I'm not really good with coming up to like pet names and stuff like that. I'm playing Power World at the moment, the big new thing that everybody is playing, and I don't really name any of my pals like anything. Even when I'm playing like Pokemon Violet, right? I started getting back into that a little bit, but like I'm not nicknaming any of my Pokemon or pals or anything. Mary, on the other hand, nicknames everybody anything. I bet she would think of a really good nickname for a kobold, probably Bubby or something, or Crispy. I think she would like Crispy. DM is visibly upset that a gaggle of stinky kobolds in the woods proved no match for level 7 Oracle, a dwarf with a 5+ weapon. So she ups the ante in the next session. We're just walking along the road when click click, random encounter time. 4 gargoyles and 2 araignées? I probably mispronounced it completely. Commanding them. Araignées. Okay, apparently it's araignées. What the hell are araignées doing here? In the middle of the road, on a freaking Sunday. Dwarf immediately decapitates 1 araignées on turn 1. Vorpal, don't discriminate. The DM sees in full view, probably reconsidering giving the dwarf that axe. Meanwhile, I'm smashing some gargoyles. I don't get any one-hitters, but they're not gonna be good after this fight. One hits me and I immediately overheal its damage. Fight is looking like a wash, but suddenly our gnome rogue was grabbed by the other araignées and carried off. No save or roll involved. It just snatched and dashed. She says, "Vengeance of our lord will be mine." Who? The headless araignées corpse is wearing a holy symbol of an evil god, eventually identified as a god of decay and death. The druid just so happens to be walking through seconds later, telling us the tree said you were in danger, and then gives us a huge lore dump. The druid tells us that this was the evil god that Bob mooned and beat up. We need to find Bob if we're to have a hope in rescuing the gnome. Oh my god, now you're putting a contrived way to just include Bob into the story forcefully. Listen DM, if the party does not want to have Bob in the story, don't ham-fist and force Bob in the story. It's fine if you want to introduce a character, but if the party doesn't want to like seek them out by themselves, then you don't force them to have the character there specifically. Maybe a little bit is fine, like maybe if you need an expert tracker or an archaeologist to protect for a little bit, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with adding a specific NPC for a little bit, but if your party doesn't want to do anything with Bob or have Bob involved in any way, don't force it, don't ham-fist it. We have never met Bob. We had no reason to want to meet Bob, but now our gnome was somewhere in hell or something, completely separated from the group. We had to find Bob, who was going to save our gnome, because Bob is the only one who can do it. Our gnome spent our entire campaign session doing literally nothing while we spent time looking for Bob. Mind you, our story hook had been completely swept under the rug. Remember the Tiamat thing? That whole impending apocalypse? Nah, we gotta find Bob, who's off somewhere else. No clues. The druid, despite having only great things to say about their time with Bob and having preternatural senses via the wilderness, has no idea where Bob is. I feel bad for the gnome, dude. Imagine just having to sit around with a thumb up your ass, just waiting for your character to finally be there. You just have to wait for everybody else to find this Bob character. I would have left immediately. So we just look around asking, have you seen Bob? Everyone knows who he is and how great he is, but nobody had seen him. The gnome asks where he is, and the DM says, you're in a cage, and the world around you is dark. That's it. Gnome says, I have dark vision. What do I see? Nothing. There's nobody. Just a cage. Session ends with no path forward, and the gnome locked off some place that doesn't exist for 3 hours on top-notch gameplay. Next session day rolled around, and the DM said her husband was going to join, and that he was excited to play Bob again. Her husband comes onto the stream alongside her. A man who is pathetically drunk, belching as soon as he's on camera, but it's one of those bubbly ones where he sounds like he's gonna be sick. We're not 15 minutes into the session, her husband keels over and vomits into an aluminum waste bin. Gnome just leaves. Dwarf and I soon follow. We decide that's enough of the mess and just put it behind us. I wasn't really friends with either one of the players, so Gnome just kinda went in his own way. I kept Dwarf player on as I went to make a campaign myself, which went much better for how long it lasted, but it might just warrant a slightly tamer story there. And the campaign ends with Bob, or the husband, belching all over the place and vomiting into a trash can. Great, what a beautiful ending. Why you had the whole story with Tiamat and world-ending stuff, but now we gotta go on an excursion to find Bob. I'm sick of Bob. I'm genuinely sick of Bob. To all Bobs out there, you're great. This Bob, however, this DM, see, it's not even that Bob is bad. We don't know anything about Bob from themselves, from the player themselves. We just know how the DM described Bob, and so far, it looks like the DM really loves having Bob around, and it's fine. If the DM wants to make a campaign all about Bob, they can do so. Sure, do whatever you want, but don't force other players to be in some weird fanfic. Just don't do that. Just like how you shouldn't ham-fist fetishes into games, don't ham-fist other people's NPCs or PCs or whatever into a game and turn it into a fanfic game. Imagine if like Mike's Succubus game where Succulandia and all the Succubus and everything was about like, oh, how good Morrow is, he's so cool, he's so amazing, he's so hot, he's so incredible in bed. It would just be cringe, dude. Nobody would want to play that. Not even I would want to play that. I don't want a story just all about me. The fun is to include everybody into the game. I don't want a whole story just about me or a whole story arc just for Morrow. I want a story arc that includes everybody. Includes Morrow and his friends, Mary and Micah, maybe somebody else as well from, you know, my other friend group and stuff. Going on adventures together, doing cool shit together. That's what I want. Story about one single person where everything is about this one single guy. That'd be boring as hell. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thank you so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.